The sun of the alien marketplace burned like fire above the crowd, and the air was thick with smoke, dust, and loud voices. Traders shouted prices, buyers argued, and cages rattled as scared slaves tried to hide from the eyes watching them. Among all the noise, one small cage stood in the shadows at the very end of the market. Inside, it sat a thin alien girl, shaking quietly. She kept her knees pulled close to her chest, her arms wrapped tightly around them like she was trying to disappear. The traders called her mute. They said she could not talk, could not scream, could not even cry. They said she was useless, defective, and not worth even a single credit. But the girl's eyes told another story. They were wide, full of fear, full of secrets she refused to speak. Evan, a human traveler passing through the market, stopped when he saw her. He was not there to buy anyone. He had only come looking for supplies before leaving the planet. But something about the girl caught his attention. Maybe it was how still she sat. Maybe it was how frightened she looked. Or maybe it was the way her eyes flicked toward every sound like she expected something terrible to happen. The auctioneer noticed him staring. "You want her?" The alien man laughed. "She's mute, broken. No use for work, no use for pleasure, no use for anything." Evan didn't answer at first. He just watched the girl. She kept her head low, but her fingers pressed hard into the floor of the cage, like she was trying to stop herself from shaking. "How much?" Evan finally asked. The auctioneer blinked in surprise. "How much?" "For this one?" "Pennies. She's barely alive. I'll sell her just to empty the cage." Pennies. That was less than a day's meal. It felt wrong. Buying a living person felt even more wrong. But leaving her here, in this dirty cage, surrounded by cruel traders and laughing buyers, that felt worse. Evan sighed. "Fine, I'll take her." The crowd burst into laughter. Some shook their heads, calling him a fool. But Evan ignored them. He thought maybe he could take her to a safe place. Maybe he could help her heal. Maybe she just needed kindness, not chains. The auctioneer unlocked the cage. The girl flinched like she expected to be hit. She pressed herself against the corner, breathing fast. Evan crouched down slowly so he wouldn't scare her. "It's okay," he said in a quiet voice. "You're safe now." Her eyes snapped to his face, and for the first time he saw something new in them. Not hope, not trust. Something else feared so deep that even silence couldn't hide it. Evan reached out his hand gently, trying to help her stand. But the moment his fingers got close to her arm, the girl jerked back and gasped. It was the first sound she had made. Her chest rose and fell quickly. Her mouth trembled, and then, in a voice sharp with terror, she screamed a single word. "Run!" The entire marketplace froze. Every head turned. Even Evan's heart stopped for a moment. The girl wasn't mute. She hadn't been mute at all. She screamed again, louder this time, her voice full of panic. "Run! Run! Run!" Before Evan could ask why, before he could even breathe, the ground beneath them shook. The metal cages rattled. The sand trembled. A low, monstrous growl echoed from somewhere behind the market stalls. A sound so deep it vibrated inside his bones. Buyers began shouting. Traders dropped their goods. People ran in every direction as fear ripped through the marketplace like a storm. Evan grabbed the girl's arm. "What is coming?" he asked. She didn't look at him. Her wide eyes stared at the darkness behind the tents. "Them," she whispered. "They found me?" Another growl shook the air closer now. Evan pulled her out of the cage, ignoring the auctioneer's protests, ignoring the crowd's panic. He had no idea what was chasing her, but he knew one thing. She was not safe here, and now. Neither was he as they ran through the smoke and chaos of the market. Evan heard heavy footsteps pounding on the ground behind them. Something massive was pushing through the stalls, something hunting. The girl clung to his arm, her voice shaking. "They will kill you too," she whispered, "because you touched me." Evan didn't look back. He just ran faster, and somewhere behind them, in the rising dust, glowing eyes opened, eyes searching for her, eyes that would not stop, not tonight, not ever. Evan pulled the alien girl through the narrow alleys behind the marketplace, his heart pounding harder with every step. The ground still shook behind them, and the growls grew louder, deeper, more violent. Whatever was chasing them was not small. It was not weak, and it was definitely not an ordinary creature. The girl clung to his arm, her breath shaking. She kept looking over her shoulder as if she expected the monster to jump out at any second. Evan tried to speak between breaths. "What is that thing?" She shook her head fast. "Not thing. Soldiers send it. A hunter beast. They used it to track me." Evan didn't understand everything. But he understood one thing. She was running from something far more dangerous than a simple animal. The alley opened into a wider street filled with broken stalls, smashed crates, and panicking people. Some were screaming, some were hiding, and some were running so fast they pushed others aside. A group of traders ran past Evan shouting, "It's loose. The beast is loose. Run!" Behind them came another roar. This time, the sound bounced off the walls so violently that dust rained from the rooftops. The girl covered her ears and whispered, "It's getting closer. It smells me." Evan tightened his grip on her hand. "We need to get off the street." He pulled her toward an abandoned storage building. The door was half broken, hanging on loose hinges. Inside, the air was cold and full of shadows. Evan guided her inside and pushed a metal crate in front of the doorway to block the entrance. But before he could even catch his breath, the ground trembled again. The girl trembled too and whispered, "It knows." A second later, something crashed into the outside wall. The entire building shook. Dust exploded from the ceiling. Evan stepped back, shielding the girl with his body. The creature let out another roar, so loud the metal beams vibrated. Evan whispered, "Stay behind me." The girl grabbed his shirt. "You don't understand. If it finds me, it calls them. The soldiers. They will take me, and they will kill you." Evan didn't answer. He couldn't. His eyes stayed fixed on the shaking wall as long cracks spread across the surface. Another impact smashed the wall. This time, a huge claw tore through the metal, sharp, black, and long enough to slice a man in half. The claw scraped across the wall, sending sparks flying. The girl's knees gave out, and she fell. She covered her mouth, trying not to scream. The beast roared, and the sound shook the entire room. Its claws ripped the wall again, tearing a hole wide enough for a glowing yellow eye to peek through. The eye locked on the girl instantly. She froze. The beast growled low, like it was warning her that running would only make the chase more fun. Evan grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the back exit. The beast slammed its massive body against the wall again, ripping it open even wider. Evan didn't wait to see the full shape. He pushed the girl forward. "Go! Run!" They burst out the back door just as the beast tore through the wall behind them. The building collapsed in a cloud of dust and metal. People in the street screamed and scattered again. Evan and the girl sprinted through another alley. This one led toward the starport. Evan knew if he could reach his cruiser, they had a chance to escape. Behind them, the beast charged through the debris, crushing crates like paper. Its heavy footsteps shaking the ground. The girl gasped, "It won't stop. It never stops." Evan grabbed a metal pipe from the ground and threw it at the creature. It bounced harmlessly off its thick hide. But it bought them 2 seconds. 2 seconds was enough. They reached the starport gate. The guard tried to stop them, shouting, "No entry without," but then he saw the beast behind them and ran the other way without. Finishing his sentence, the girl stumbled, but Evan caught her. "Just a little more," he said. The beast roared again. The sound echoed through every corridor. Evan hit the panel to open the hangar doors. The moment it opened, they rushed inside. His small cruiser sat at the center, lights off. Engines cold, he pushed the girl inside first. Then jumped in after her and sealed the door. Outside. The beast slammed into the hangar wall, denting the metal. Evan started the engine. The floor vibrated as the ship powered up. The girl held the seat with shaking hands. "It's calling them," she whispered. "The soldiers are coming." Evan's eyes widened because she was right. Through the hangar window, he saw 3 black armored soldiers approaching, scanning the area with glowing weapons. And all 3 were looking for her. The cruiser shook as Evan pushed it into the air, engines screaming from the sudden lift. The hangar doors opened just enough for the ship to squeeze through, and Evan forced the controls forward. The cruiser shot out into the dark sky, leaving the beast roaring behind them. But the danger wasn't over. 3 black armored soldiers on hoverbikes rose from the starport below and locked onto the cruiser. Their cold helmets turned toward the fleeing ship like hungry predators. "They found me," the girl whispered, her voice trembling. "I knew they would find me." Evan tilted the ship sharply to the left as a plasma shot tore past them. The beam grazed the ship's wing, leaving a glowing red scar. He gritted his teeth. "Hold on." The girl grabbed the nearest seat and closed her eyes tightly. Her breathing was fast and uneven. Another shot came, this one hitting the back thruster. The cruiser jerked, alarms blaring. "Are they bounty hunters?" Evan asked, trying to angle the ship away from the planet's atmosphere. The girl didn't answer. Her silence was different this time, not fear, but guilt. "Tell me," Evan said, still fighting the controls. "Who are they? Why are they hunting you?" She kept shaking her head. "If I tell you, you will throw me out. Everyone does." Evan glanced at her. Even in the dim lights of the cockpit, he could see her hands trembling. She wasn't just running from danger, she was running from her own past. "I won't throw you out," he said firmly. "Just talk to me." Another blast hit the ship's side. The cruiser spun, and Evan struggled to stabilize it. The girl cried out and grabbed the wall. Finally, when the ship steadied, she took a small breath. "My name is Leary," she whispered. Evan nodded. "Leary? Okay. Who are those soldiers?" She looked down at her hands. "They belong to the House of Urkosh." Evan frowned. "Never heard of it." "You don't want to," she whispered. "They own planets. They own ships. They own people." Her voice cracked. "They owned me." Evan's stomach tightened. "For how long?" He asked softly. "Since I was little," she said. "They took children from captured worlds. They trained us. They used us. They hurt us." Evan could hear the pain in her voice. He didn't interrupt. But why pretend to be mute? He asked. Leary hugged her knees, shaking. "Because if I speak, they know my voice. They track it. They listen through every device, every city, every market." Evan's eyes widened. "So your voice is dangerous?" She nodded. "They coded my voice when I was young. They made us speak into machines. They said it was to test our words, but it was to track us forever." Evan felt a chill run through him. He had never heard of such cruelty. Leary continued, her voice barely a whisper. "So I stopped talking. Completely, I became mute so I could hide in silence. No trace, no signal, no message, no voice. Her eyes filled with tears. But today, when you reached for me, I broke. I spoke. I shouted. A tear fell down her cheek, and now they are here. The ship shook again as more plasma shots hit the shields. Evan cursed and turned the ship sharply upward. "Leary," he said, "you didn't do anything wrong. You were scared. Anyone would be." She shook her head harder. "No, you don't understand. The House of Urkash never stops. They track, they hunt, they punish. If they catch me, they will kill you for touching me." Evan met her eyes. "I won't let them catch us." She stared at him like she didn't believe him. No one had ever said such words to her before. Alarms beeped again. The soldiers were closing in. The hoverbikes were fast and agile, made for pursuit. One soldier activated a voice amplifier. His cold voice boomed through the speakers. "Return the asset. The girl belongs to us." Leary's breath broke. She covered her ears. Her whole body shook. Evans slammed the communication button. "She belongs to no one." He shouted. The soldier didn't respond. Instead, he raised his weapon. Leary gasped. "He's going to disable the engine the plasma shot fired." Evan jerked the cruiser down, and the beam passed inches above them. Leary screamed, "We won't make it. We won't." Evan suddenly turned the ship toward the thick clouds below. "What are you doing?" she cried. "Hiding," he said. In the storm. The cruiser plunged into the swirling gray clouds. Lightning flashed across their windows. Wind slammed against the ship like giant fists. Behind them, the soldiers hesitated. Leary clutched her seat. "I never wanted anyone to get hurt because of me," she whispered. Evan tightened his grip on the controls. "Too late," he said. "I'm already in it with you." And the storm swallowed them whole. The storm swallowed Evan's cruiser like a giant mouth. Lightning flashed across the windows, painting the cockpit in white light. Thunder shook the metal walls as if giants were striking the ship with their fists. Rain hit the hull so hard it sounded like thousands of tiny explosions. Visibility was almost zero, but for the first time since the chase began. The hoverbike soldiers hesitated. Evan gripped the controls tightly. The ship shook violently, almost thrown sideways by the wind. Leary held the seat with both hands. Her knuckles turned pale. "Storms here are dangerous," she whispered. "This one is old. Wild. Even beasts don't enter." "Good," Evan said. "Then they won't either." But he was wrong. A red dot blinked on the screen. Then another. And another .lir, I gasped. "They're still following us, through the thick clouds." The shadows of 3 hoverbikes appeared like ghost shapes moving closer, lightning flashing behind them. Evan's jaw tightened. "They're insane. They're trained to be," Leary whispered. The storm hit the ship again. The cruiser dipped sharply. Evan yanked the controls back, barely keeping them steady, as another bolt of lightning lit up the sky. Leary noticed something on the soldier's armor, a crest glowing blue. Her face drained of color. "That mark," she whispered. "That means they're not just guards." She swallowed hard. "They're elite hunters." Evan didn't know the name, but he could tell by Leary's reaction that these weren't normal soldiers. "What does that mean?" he asked. "It means," Leary trembled, "they are allowed to kill anyone who stands between them and their target." Evan breathed out slowly. "Great." The storm roared around them. The cruiser's engines whined under the pressure. Suddenly, a communication signal cut through the noise. A cold mechanical voice filled the cockpit. "Asset Leary 7 detected." Leary's heart dropped. "Bounty activated." Evan's eyes narrowed. "Bounty." Leary closed her eyes. "They put a price on me. Years ago, when I escaped the first time." Evan looked at her, stunned. You escaped before. She nodded weakly. Yes, they caught me. They punished me. They marked me. Then I escaped again. Tears filled her eyes. I promised myself never to speak again so they couldn't track me. But today, I broke the promise. Behind them, the elite hunters moved closer. The voice continued. Any citizen who assists the fugitive will be executed. Evan frowned. They think threatening me will make me surrender you. Leary shook her head. They're not threatening. They're announcing. To everyone. Across the planet. Evan tightened his grip on the controls. Outside, a hoverbike soldier moved into position. His weapon glowed. Leary whispered, "They won't shoot to kill me. They'll try to disable the ship." At that exact moment, a plasma shot pierced through the storm, hitting the cruiser's right side. The ship lurched violently. Evan cursed. They're trying. He pushed the ship lower, closer to the swirling clouds, but the hunters chased him relentlessly. The storm split open with lightning, revealing the dark sky beneath them. They were nearing the lower atmosphere. Evan shouted, "Hold on." He pushed the cruiser into the freefall. The ship dropped like a stone. Leary screamed. Her hands flew to her chest as her stomach rose into her throat. The hunters followed but struggled in the violent air currents. Evan pulled the ship back upward just before hitting the dangerous lower storm layer. The engines roared, fire shooting from the thrusters. One hunter misjudged the shift and spun out, disappearing into the dark clouds below. Leary gasped. One down. But the remaining two were relentless. They sped forward, almost touching the cruiser's tail. Leary squeezed her eyes shut. "Evan, you're risking your life for me." Why, he didn't answer at first. Lightning flashed. The storm cracked with sound. The ship shook again. Finally, he said quietly, "Because nobody should be hunted like this. Nobody." Leary stared at him. No one had ever said such words about her life. Not even once. Suddenly, the communication system activated again. This time, a deeper voice spoke. A voice filled with pride and cruelty. "Leary 7, it said. Your silence ends today. You belong to House for Cash." Leary collapsed in her seat, shaking. Evan's eyes burned with anger. "Who is that?" She whispered, "Their leader." "Commander Varak." The voice continued. "Return the asset now, or your human pilot dies." Evan smirked. "He'll have to come kill me himself." And at that moment, the clouds broke open, revealing a massive warship waiting above them, lights glowing. Weapons, charging soldiers lined up, all aiming at one small cruiser. Evan whispered, "Oh, hell." Leary grabbed his arm, and the warship began to descend. Evan stared at the massive warship descending through the storm clouds, its metal body larger than a city block. It blocked the sky like a floating mountain. Hundreds of lights glowed on its surface, scanning every direction. Plasma cannons powered up with a deep hum that made the air vibrate. Leary froze the moment she saw it. Her breath caught in her throat. "That's their flagship," she whispered. "They sent it for me." Evan felt his stomach twist. All this for one girl. Why? The two remaining elite hunters on hoverbikes positioned themselves behind the cruiser. Their engines roared in sync with the warship above. The deep voice of Commander Varak echoed again from the speakers. "Leary 7, your value is greater than you know. Return now, or the human dies." Evan leaned forward. "He keeps saying value. What does that mean?" Leary didn't answer. Instead, she hugged herself tightly, shaking so hard she could barely breathe. "I didn't want you to know," she whispered. "I didn't want anyone to know." Evan softened his voice. "Know what?" She lifted her trembling hands. "I'm not Normal. Not like other slaves. The cruiser shook suddenly as the warship's gravity pull activated, dragging them upward like a magnet. Evan tried to fight the force, but the controls barely responded. Leary stared out the window, terror in her eyes. They made experiments on children. They forced us to use abilities we didn't understand. Some died. Some lost their minds. But some survived. Evan's eyes widened. Abilities. Leary nodded slowly. Lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating her tear-stained face. "I can sense danger," she whispered, seconds before it happens. "I feel the future hit me like a shock. Painful, sharp, but real. I always know when death comes. That's how I survived." Evan stared at her in disbelief and admiration. "That's how you warned me at the market." "Yes," she said, "but I never used it fully. They trained me to use more, much more, but I refused. I pretended I couldn't. That's why they punished me." The cruiser jerked violently as a magnetic beam locked onto it. The screen flashed. Tractor beam Ionja Gidvan gritted his teeth. "They're pulling us in." Leary shook her head desperately. "No. No, if they take me, they'll take you too. They never leave witnesses." She squeezed her eyes shut, fighting panic. Evan looked at her. "Leary, listen to me. Can you use your ability now? Can you show me what's coming?" She shook her head. "No. Using it sends out a signal. They'll track me instantly." Evan pointed out the window. "They already found us. The time for hiding is over." Leary's breath hitched. He was right. The warship loomed closer, its hangar doors opening like a giant mouth ready to swallow them. Evan placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "Whatever you can do, do it now." Leary closed her eyes tightly. Her hands trembled. Her breathing grew deep and uneven. A faint light began to glow around her finger, soft at first, then slowly brighter. The air around her shifted. The cockpit temperature dropped. Static energy danced across the floor. Evan watched in silent awe. Leary whispered, "I can see the path out." Suddenly, she gasped. Her eyes opened, glowing faint silver. "Left." She shouted. Evan pulled the controls left, just as a plasma beam fired from above, missing their ship by inches. "Down." He dove downward, the cruiser falling, just as another blast tore through the space they had been in. The tractor beam flickered. Leary's voice grew stronger. "Hard right." Evan jerked the ship right. The two elite hunters fired, but their shots collided mid-air instead of hitting the cruiser. Leary's whole body shook. Her power rippled off her like heat waves. "I'm seeing everything. Every shot before it fires. Every move before it happens." Her voice cracked. "It hurts." Evan stepped closer, one hand still fighting the controls. "Stay with me, Leary. We can escape." She clenched her fists as another wave of energy surged through her. "The warship will fire a net cannon 3 seconds from now, aimed at the left wing." Evan flipped the cruiser upward. A massive energy net shot from the warship straight under the ship. Leary screamed in pain. She fell to her knees, holding her head. Evan caught her before she hit the floor. "Leary, are you okay?" She shook violently. "It's too much. Too much. They'll sense me. They'll feel my power." She didn't finish. The communication screen flickered. Commander Vorak's voice thundered. "So, the little experiment still works." Leary froze. Evan's heart stopped. Vera continued. "Now I know exactly where you are." The warship powered its main cannon. Leary looked up at Evan, her voice breaking. "They're going to destroy us." The main cannon of the warship glowed brighter and brighter, gathering energy like a rising sun. Evan felt sweat forming on his forehead. The heat from the charging weapon reached them even from miles away. If it fired, their small cruiser would vanish in a single flash. Leary clung to the cockpit seat, shaking. Her eyes were losing their silver glow. She was exhausted, barely holding herself together. Evan whispered, "Stay with me. Just a little more." Leary lifted her weak gaze. We can't outrun a main cannon. Nothing can." Her voice cracked. She wasn't afraid for herself. She was afraid for him. Evan checked the radar desperately. They were close to a small moongray, cracked, empty. A dead world. A place nobody visited. A place nobody searched. Unless it was exactly where their enemy wanted them. Evan pulled the controls sharply. "We're going there," Leary gasped. "That moon. It's abandoned, cursed, full of collapsed stations. Perfect hiding place," Evan said. "Or the perfect trap." The cruiser shot downward. The warship adjusted its cannon. Commander Varrock's voice echoed, "Running to a rock will not save you, human." Evan ignored him. The cruiser hit the moon's thin atmosphere. Dust rose in huge clouds as they descended toward the cracked surface. Large craters spread like scars. Broken structures lay scattered, rusted metal towers, shattered domes. Half-buried research labs. Evan spotted a cave-like opening between two collapsed towers. He angled the ship toward it, but the main cannon finally fired. A giant beam shot from the warship, tearing through space like a pillar of fire, aimed directly at them. Leary screamed. Evan pushed the thrusters to the maximum. The cruiser dove into the cave at the last possible second. Boom! The cannon beam hit the moon's surface behind them, exploding into a giant crater. The shockwave rocked the cave, its collapsing parts of the ceiling. Evan fought the controls until the ship finally stopped inside a dark chamber. They were alive, barely dust settled around them. Leary fell against him, weak and trembling. "You saved us," she whispered. "No," Evan said softly. "You saved us. I just flew where you pointed." Before she could answer, a loud metallic thud echoed outside the cave. Then another, and another. Evan froze. Leary's breathing stopped. "They followed us," she whispered. Evan looked at the radar. Not one. Signaled not two, but many. 12 red dots. The elite hunters had already landed. They were surrounding the cave. Evan closed his eyes for a moment. Of course Varrock wasn't trying to kill you," he muttered. "He wanted to push us somewhere he could trap us." Leary's voice shook uncontrollably. "They will take me. You must run. Hide deeper in the caves. They won't chase you if you leave me behind." Evan stared at her. Not happening. She grabbed his arm desperately. "Please, if they take me, I will survive. I always survive. But you, they will kill you for helping me. Go before they enter." Evan didn't move. He placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "Leary, I'm not leaving you." She looked at him like no one had ever said such words to her. Footsteps echoed at the cave entrance, heavy, steady, armored. The elite hunters stepped in. Their black helmets glowed faint red. Their weapons hummed with deadly energy. Evan grabbed a metal bar from the cruiser's floor. Leary's eyes widened. "You can't fight them. Watch me." The first hunter marched forward. Evan swung the metal bar with all his strength. It hit the hunter's helmet, but barely made a dent. The hunter swung back, sending Evan flying into the wall. Leary screamed, crawling toward him. The hunter lifted its weapon toward Evan's head. Leary's eyes glowed silver again. "No," she cried. A shockwave burst out of her body, throwing the hunter backward. Dust exploded across the cave. Stones rolled. Metal screeched, but she wasn't done. 3 more hunters charged. Leary's hands shook violently. glowing brighter and brighter. She pushed her power again. Another wave shot out, slamming into all three soldiers. The cave ceiling cracked from the impact, but the hunters kept coming. Leary collapsed to her knees, choking from exhaustion. I can't. Keep doing this. It hurts too much. Evan crawled to her, pulling her close. Then don't. Save your strength. But they'll take me, she whispered. Evan lifted her chin gently. Only if I fall first. Leary stared at him, tears in her eyes. Then the cave trembled again. A shadow appeared at the entrance door, broader, more terrifying than the others. Commander Varak himself stepped into the cave. His armor glowed dark red. His voice echoed like thunder. End of running, Leary 7. You belong to me. Leary buried her face in Evan's chest, shaking. Evan stood up, blocking Vorak's path. You want her? Evan said quietly. You'll have to go through me first. Varak smiled beneath his helmet. With pleasure, human. Commander Varak stepped deeper into the cave, his heavy boots crushing stones beneath him. The red glow from his armor filled the darkness like a burning sun. Behind him, the remaining elite hunters formed a wall, blocking any escape. Their weapons hummed with deadly light, ready to fire at the smallest movement. Leary clung to Evan's arm, shaking harder than ever. She had faced punishments, cages, fear, but never Varak himself. He was the one who ordered the experiments. He was the one who marked their voices. He was the one who claimed she belonged to him. Varak raised his weapon and pointed it directly at Evan's head. Step aside, human. Evan wiped blood from his nose, still breathing hard, still shaking from the earlier fight. But his voice stayed steady. No. A long silence filled the cave. Even the storm outside seemed to pause. Varak tilted his head, like he was amused by the courage of a small insect. You do not understand, Varak said. The girl is an experiment. She is property. She is alive, Evan cut in. And she chooses her own life. The elite hunters aimed their guns instantly. Leary gasped and grabbed Evan's arm. Please, please don't fight them. They will kill you. Varak never loses. Evan looked at her. Maybe he never fought someone with a reason. Varak stepped forward. Reason. You risk death for a product you bought for pennies. Evan's fists clenched. I'm risking death for someone who should never have been in a cage. Varak's visor glowed brighter. For the first time, anger sharpened his voice. You are disposable. Move or die. Evan stepped closer to him. I said, no. Varak swung his arm. The back of his gauntlet crashed into Evan's chest, sending him flying across the cave. Evan hit the wall hard, coughing out blood, vision shaking. Leary screamed and ran to him, dropping beside him with trembling hands. Evan. Evan, get up, please. He tried to rise, but his body wouldn't obey. Varak walked toward them slowly. Leary put herself between Evan and the commander, even though she could barely stand. Take me, she said in a shaking voice. Please leave him. He helped me. He doesn't deserve this. Varak laughed a cold, deep sound. You still don't understand. Anyone who helps you becomes a target. He dies because he touched what is mine. Leary squeezed her eyes shut. Her breathing quickened. Pain shot through her head. Her power flickered inside her like a storm trying to break free. She whispered, stop. Varak raised his weapon again. Evan reached out weakly from the ground. Leary, don't. Don't surrender. But she couldn't watch him die. She stood tall for the first time. Her small body shaking, her hands glowing slightly not with force, but with fear turning into courage. Varak aimed. Leary whispered, enough. A silver flash burst from her eyes. Varak fired. The plasma bolt flew, but it never hit. A thick shockwave exploded outward from Leary's body, pushing Varak's blast to the side. It struck the cave ceiling instead, sending a rain of rocks crashing around them. Varak staggered backward for the first time. Leary's power grew brighter, her hair lifting slightly as if caught in a wind no one could feel. She cried out, not in fear, but in pain and defiance, "I am not your property." She yelled, her voice echoed like thunder, shaking the cave itself. "I am not Leary 7. I am Leary." The shockwave blasted outward again, bigger than before. The elite hunters were thrown off their feet. Their helmets cracked. Their weapons flew from their hands, sparking across the ground. Varak tried to stand his ground, digging his boots into the dirt. But even he slid backward. Evan watched her in awe, barely able to breathe. Leary stepped forward, tears falling from her glowing eyes. "You took my voice," she cried. "You took my freedom. You took my childhood. But you will never take my life again." Varak roared in anger and charged at her. Evan forced himself to his feet. "Leary, watch out." But she didn't need to, for the first time. She saw the future not with fear, but with strength. She lifted her hands. A final shockwave erupted, stronger, brighter, louder than any before. It threw Varak across the cave, slamming him into a stone pillar with such force that his armor cracked open. He fell, and didn't rise. Silence fell. Dust drifted like snow. Evan limped toward her. "Leary, are you okay?" Her glowing eyes faded. She swayed, falling into his arms. I didn't mean to hurt anyone," she whispered. Evan held her gently. "You didn't. You saved us." She looked up at him. "You heard my voice. And you didn't run." Evan smiled weakly. "I ran with you." "Big difference." She gave a small, tired smile. Outside the cave, the warship engine shifted. Without their commander, the soldiers retreated. The threat was gone, for the first time in her life. Leary was free. Evan carried her toward the cruiser. "Come on," he whispered. "Let's leave this moon behind." Leary rested her head on his chest. "Evan, thank you for hearing me." He held her closer. "Your voice," he said softly, "changed everything." And together they stepped into the light of a new beginning.